And then we're going to hand it over to we're going to ask questions from our candidates, and Courtney's going to moderate that. So the first thing that we do at our Quincy Votes meetings are go over some of the group agreements. So I'm going to share those with all of you tonight so that we're all on the same page with our community agreements that we have. The first one is that we are creating a brave space. And that means that sometimes hard things are going to be said, and that we're going to meet each other with authenticity and respect always. We are going to make the space accessible to all by monitoring the space that you're taking or not taking, and make sure that everyone has a chance to speak and participate. Of course, one person speaks at a time. We are being civil and leading with kindness in everything that we do. And it's okay to disagree, certainly, especially in candidate forums. We know there's going to be disagreement, and that is part of a healthy democracy. And we are going to do that with respect and civility. And when our groups, we talk about participation, and we've appreciated all the participation that many of you have already engaged in by submitting questions ahead of time, by sharing the information about this candidate forum with your friends and family. So we appreciate the participation you've already shown for this, and will continue to. In terms of confidentiality, that's one of our group agreements, and we ask people to share the learning that they took, but not necessarily specific stories. It's a little different for a candidate forum. We definitely want everyone to share more widely what they learned and gleaned from these candidates, and what their thinking is as they move forward in decision making. Be as present as possible by limiting your technology. I know that texts and emails come in all the time, and so being present and focused on what's happening right now can be a little challenging, but we're inviting you to be as mindful and present as possible. We also ask people to practice self-care. And so sometimes things get a little overwhelming or feel like I just can't do this next thing. And that's okay. We definitely one of our goals is building community. And part of that is making sure that everyone is prioritizing their health and their well-being. We also invite people to check themselves. So if there's something that lands for you in a way that is uncomfortable, that you take a look at, why that might be for you. That we're really here to learn and grow together. And so checking on, what's happening for you is a big priority with that. We also don't typically say this in our meetings because it's not true, but we don't know if there's children watching tonight, young people who may be interested in learning more about this role in this office. And so we are mindful that we could have a range of participants here. And so making sure that any language that we use or ways that we talk about the issues are kid-friendly and family-friendly. So those are our group agreements, and we have all committed to those over time. And we hope that you can all commit to those tonight as well. So I'm going to share a bit about what our group's mission is. We have, you can check this out on our website as well. The mission statement for our group is, our nonpartisan volunteer group aims to inform and empower all community members in Quincy to engage in local issues and substantially increase voter turnout in city elections. It's a pretty big, sorry, my little one wants to, sorry, pal. It's a pretty big goal that we have, and we've been working hard towards that. Some of the things that we've been doing, we just started this group in December of last year was our first meeting, and we had a big turnout for our first in-person meeting. And we've done a lot of hard work as a volunteer group since then. Collectively, we decided on a mission statement, which you just heard. We also then had a logo contest where we chose our logo, which was really exciting. We have also participated in local events like Quincy Pride and the Flag Day Parade. And we have had so much volunteer support that we've been able to create a website and also have a pretty strong social media presence. We have a Facebook page and a Facebook group, and we also now are on Twitter. So we've been very excited to be able to do that. We also have materials that have been printed in English and Chinese. See if I can show them to you. It's hard with this background. Oh, it's not going to work. Okay. Well, you're going to have to come see us at August Moon. We are going to be at August Moon Festival this Sunday from 12 to 4. And we are really excited to be able to have materials in Chinese so that we can really communicate to everyone in our community that their voice matters, their vote matters. And we're here to make sure that they feel as comfortable participating in Quincy and all things civic engagement as possible. So please check out, if you haven't yet, our website, quincyvotes.com. Email us at quincyvotes@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, Quincy Votes. We are growing in the past year and really excited to have as many new participants as possible and lots of new and innovative ideas. People come to us with ideas like having this forum, and then we are able to provide the support to make it happen. So really grateful to Courtney Perdios and Delia Weddleton for really taking the big, strong stance and saying we need to have this so we can better understand this role and be informed voters around what civic engagement across the Commonwealth looks like. And so really grateful for their leadership in this. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Courtney to get us started.
Thanks, Liz. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're all joining us tonight. And as Liz laid out here, we Quincy Votes, we had our meeting and we were talking about how we can increase voter turnout. And one of those things is just making a more educated voter and letting voters know what's important, why they should vote, why these positions matter. So we thought so Delia and I put together some information about the Secretary of the Commonwealth position, just so you guys can have a background when you're hearing from the candidates themselves. I know Tanisha's here already. Thank you so much, Tanisha, for joining us. We are expecting Rayla in a little bit. And Bill, I'm not sure, we did not hear back from him, so we're not sure if he's going to be joining us, but we're not sure on that one. So we'll see when the time comes for questions where we're at, but thank you, Tanisha, for coming to start. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have a PowerPoint presentation here for you. It's only 8 slides, so it's not super long, I promise. All right. Give me 1 sec here. Okay. Can you guys see this? A little thumbs up if you can see that. All right, I am going to start the slideshow. All right, I'm gonna somehow get this out of here so we can see. All right, so I can no longer see all of you. So I'm hoping that, hoping that you can all see this and just interrupt me at any point if for some reason something's happening here. All right, so the Secretary of the Commonwealth, this is our candidate forum and information session. Let's see, and I turn it here, I'll put some photos of across the state here to have some pretty pictures of our state. So this, and again, I'm going to try to move this over so I can see my slides. Okay. All right, so the Secretary of the Commonwealth position is the officer in charge of overseeing records, public information about state programs, security regulations, and elections in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And just a few did you knows. So a lot of times this position, in fact, I refer to it as the Secretary of the State position, but I'm jumping ahead to bullet 3 here, but in our state, as well as in Pennsylvania and Virginia, the position is actually called Secretary of the Commonwealth. So that's why you may have seen the flyer and said, hey, what's the Secretary of the Commonwealth? But it is actually the Secretary of the State position. It's just what we call it here. So it is a state level position in 47 of the 50 US states. We do not have that position in Alaska, Hawaii, or Utah, interestingly enough. In 35 of the states that do have the position, voters elect them, the person in that role. And for the rest, in the other 12 states, it's an appointment by the governor or state legislature. So in Massachusetts, the Secretary of the Commonwealth is responsible for administering elections and maintaining official election results, voting rights and removing barriers and obstacles to voting, maintaining public records and documents, storage of historical data and the preservation of historical sites, registration of corporations and businesses, and civic engagement. And the Secretary of the Commonwealth oversees the Corporations Division, the Elections Division, the Massachusetts Archive, the Massachusetts Historical Commission, the Public Records Division, the Security Division, and the State Records center. All right, so this is a lot of words on this slide. But this is actually a lot of what our group tries to do is obviously focus on voting. So that is the element of this role and this position that we're really interested in. So I did a slide specifically on the election roles of the Secretary of the Commonwealth, although there are many other responsibilities that they have. So for elections, they're responsible for all of these things, verifying printing nomination papers that candidates use, producing the ballots, approving voting machines, providing cities and towns with ballot boxes, registering and verifying electoral college members, recording proceedings of the electoral college, providing information on running for office, absentee voting, voter registration, and general information for voters, administering election procedures as required by law, furnishing cities and town clerks with self-sealing envelopes of uniform appearance, ensuring returns are received in envelopes with unbroken seals, providing cities, towns with books to be used for registering voters, preparing and giving cities and towns voter instructions, including printed copies of proposed constitutional amendments and referendum questions, and publishing election results in a public document. And our candidates for the Secretary of the Commonwealth position here in Massachusetts, I did them alphabetically here, actually. Yes, alphabetically. Yep. So we have Rayla Campbell starting on the left is the Republican candidate. She will not be on the ballot in September. I believe that is accurate, right? Is that accurate? I believe. Yeah. Maggie.
She's on the ballot on the Republican primary ballot, but not on the Democratic one.
Okay, thanks, Maggie. Sorry for that confusion there. I want to clarify that. So she will be on the Republican ballot, and on the Democratic primary ballot will be Bill Galvin, who is the incumbent currently in the position, and also Tanisha Campbell. So
I'm Tanisha Sullivan.
I'm sorry, Tanisha Sullivan. I'm so sorry. Your faces are over my screen over here, and I'm just distracted by the left side of my screen. Sorry about that. All right. Okay, so this is really a good slide to kind of take note of and just write down some dates here. I'm going to move that over so you guys can see it, hopefully. So these are your dates here for voting for the upcoming fall cycle. The last day to register to vote is August 27th. In-person early voting happens August 27th through September 2nd, and primary election day is September 6th. And then the general election dates are a little bit further down there. So we just want to make sure that we're writing all these dates in there, making sure we're registered to vote, we're educated about what we're going in to vote for. We know the issues in the candidates before we walk in, and we kind of have already done that research. That's great. That's the goal. And that obviously we remember to get out on election day and vote. And in Quincy specifically, the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on primary election day on September 6th, and also on general election day on November 8th. And to find your voting location, there's the link at the bottom there. You can find that out. Also, after we hear from the candidates, we're going to stay on a little longer. And if you have trouble or questions about your voting location or finding your poll, just stay on and we will help you out. Okay. And so questions, I'm going to stop my share here. Now I can see everybody. All right, back to seeing everybody, which is what I like so much better. What we're going to do is now we're just going to again welcome our candidates here. So Tanisha Sullivan is here, and I want to give her an opportunity to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself.
Okay, wonderful. Just want to make sure that I've unmuted. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with Quincy Votes. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in Quincy to help ensure that all of the residents of Quincy know and understand their rights relative to voting, and also are inspired, motivated, and encouraged to get out and vote. I am Tanisha Sullivan. I am running for Secretary of State, the office that I believe really can and should be our chief democracy office here in Massachusetts. Just by way of background, I grew up in Brockton. I am the daughter of a public school educator. My dad spent 40 years working in the Boston public schools. My mother is a small business owner. She started 3 businesses from our kitchen table at home in Brockton. And I am now in my 20th year of legal practice. And along the way, I've had the opportunity myself to work in the Boston public schools as the chief equity officer for the district. And I'm a civil rights leader in a volunteer capacity. I serve as the president for the, sorry about that, I serve as the president for the NAACP here in Boston. And it is really in and through that work that we've been able to advance meaningful progress when it comes to economic, racial, and social justice impacting families throughout the greater Boston area and across Massachusetts. Areas related to educational equity, economic opportunity, public health, public safety, and of course, voting rights. I'm running for Secretary of State because I believe that at this time in our democracy, we need a Secretary of State who is ready to lead Massachusetts to be a beacon for the rest of our country, a beacon as it relates to the advancement of voting rights, a beacon as it relates to the transparency of public records, a beacon when it comes to economic stability for all of our communities. I'm really excited about what is possible for us to achieve through this office, and I'm really proud to have the support of many local elected officials in this race, as well as members of the labor and trade unions. And of course, I do want to lift up the support that we've received from the Chinese Progressive Political Action organization, as well as the New England Chinese American Alliance, actually very early supporters of my campaign because of the work that we've done together long before I even became a candidate. My campaign is really centered on the Office of Secretary of State becoming a more engaged and proactive office, really working to ensure that we are advancing voting rights, making sure that while we are, yes, continuing to fight for greater access to the ballot box, continuing to fight for election day registration, continuing to fight for transliterated ballots, for example, that we are also doing the work through that office that connects the office to our communities, to strengthen the relationships there, to instill trust in our government so that we can encourage, motivate, and inspire more people to vote, because voter participation is a major issue here in Massachusetts. The other area that I'm looking forward to focusing on is increasing transparency in our government. The fact of the matter is, today, Massachusetts is the least transparent state in the country. And it is the responsibility of the Secretary of State's office to ensure, as was mentioned, to ensure that public records are accessible to the public. And so my goal is to ensure that Massachusetts moves from the least transparent state to the most transparent state, ensuring that we, the people, actually have access to the information we need to, yes, hold government and our elected officials accountable, but to also participate in governing. One of the beautiful aspects of the American democracy is this ideal of self-governance, that our government should be with, for, and by the people. And in order for the people to be part of our government, we, the people, need access to information. And so that's a top priority for me. The final piece that I'll lift up before we go into Q&A is the role of the Secretary of State in helping to stabilize our economy and close and address economic inequality. Here in Massachusetts, the Secretary of State, as you heard, is really the entry point for business here in Massachusetts. If you want to do business in Massachusetts, you've got to go through the Secretary of State's office. Today, that process is really transactional. You go there as a business owner, you file your reports, and you pay your fees. There's no support that is provided to business owners. And this is particularly important for small business owners like my mom. And so as Secretary of State, I look forward to strengthening the supports that small businesses receive through the Secretary of State's office, starting with helping to lower the fees that small businesses are paying to the Secretary of State's office, but also ensuring that that office serves as a gateway, a portal, really connecting small businesses to the resources that exist in our state government. So if you are a veteran-owned, minority-owned, or woman-owned, LGBTQ-owned business, I want the Secretary of State's office to be the place you can go to be connected to the Supplier Diversity Office. If you are seeking grants, technical grants to help ensure that your small business can thrive, I want the Secretary of State's office to be the place you can go to be connected to Mass Growth Capital so you can access grants that are available. The bottom line is we need a Secretary of State's office that at this moment in time is actually stretching beyond what we have historically expected. And we need a Secretary of State's office that is going to be more proactive, more engaged, seeking to expand our democracy and ensure that we are really delivering on freedom, justice, and equality for all people. I look forward to doing that work. I look forward to doing that work in our communities. And I do believe that Massachusetts can become a beacon for the rest of the country during these very troubling times if we are willing to stretch a bit more and to expect a bit more from the Secretary of State's office. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanisha. Thank you for that great intro. I don't see Rayla or Bill by name on the call, and I just want to make sure that they're not on here under a different name or someone from their camp came in before I continue on there. Just give everybody a minute to. Okay. All right, so Tanisha, it looks like you have the floor for tonight.
Okay, wonderful.
And there's gonna be some questions coming at you, and we'll if you need to take a minute to get to kind of think about an answer. A lot of the questions that we're going to talk about tonight, we have a few already prepared, and a few that our members have submitted and different community members have submitted, and then we'll ask for some live questions toward the end if there's any there as well. But a lot of them you kind of highlighted during your intro, so we might ask you to kind of repeat or just go a little deeper in on some of those, if that's okay.
I'd love to.
Okay, so the first one we have here is so when you're out campaigning, how do you explain the role of Secretary of the Commonwealth in about a minute or so to someone just on the street that you've met, somebody that's you gave us a really good lengthy intro and comprehensive intro of what the position is, but how, kind of just boiling it down to like a minute, how would you explain the position, and why would the average voter in Quincy care about this position? Why should they care about this position?
The way I describe this position is that this is the Chief Democracy Officer responsible for ensuring that we here in Massachusetts are protecting and advancing voting rights and that we have safe and secure elections that we can all trust. This is also the office responsible for ensuring that we, the people, the public, have access to the information we need to hold our government accountable and to actively participate in governing. And this is the office that can really help us to tackle economic inequality by ensuring that our small business communities have the supports they need in order to thrive. This office is really the center point in our democracy, having the responsibility of connecting we, the people, to our government.
That's great. Thank you.
And then so that's how I describe it in a nutshell. And then your second question was about why does this position matter to people? Is that
right? Oh yeah. Or why should it matter? Why should the average voter in Quincy care about this particular issue, this particular position?
Yeah. So this office has for a very long time been quite sleepy. And what I mean by that is many people don't know what the Secretary of State's office does. But the fact of the matter is, as we learned earlier, this office actually touches on so many points, quality of life points in our democracy. This office, by way of its voting rights responsibility, has an important role to play in increasing voter participation and inspiring and motivating people to vote. And the reason that's important is because who votes determines who gets elected. and who gets elected, they have an outsized voice in the policies and in the laws that impact our daily lives. And so we need a Secretary of State who is really centered on strengthening communities and empowering people so that we can encourage more folks to vote. We need more people voting so that those who are elected can reflect the values and the needs of the communities they're serving.
Thank you. All right. So the next question here that we have is, what initiatives would you prioritize for your first year in office if you're elected?
The number one priority has to be increasing voter participation. This is an issue that is impacting communities across Massachusetts. This is an issue that regardless of where we are, whether we are in Andover or we are in Quincy, low voter participation rates are at crisis levels. And it particularly impacts what's happening in our municipalities. And so as Secretary of State, I will do three things. One, we will continue to fight for voting rights like election day registration, which the research tells us is one of the most important voting rights if we want to increase voter participation rates across all demographic groups. So we'll continue to fight for those types of policy changes. The second thing I will do is really ensure that the Secretary of State's office is physically present in more communities across Massachusetts, working alongside trusted community-based organizations like Quincy Votes and local elected officials to really work on building more trust in our government so that people are more inclined to actually cast their ballot. And the third area that we'll prioritize is civic engagement, civic education. It is critically important that the Secretary of State's office take a more active role in ensuring that we've got civics education in our schools and that it is funded, and that in our communities, residents have an opportunity to learn about how our government works and the role that each of us can play in it. We've got to demystify government here so that more people find government accessible and more people are inclined to actually participate in the process. So prioritizing voter participation has got to be number one. The second must be addressing economic inequality. And as I stated, I will do that by providing more supports to our small business community. And the third has to be government transparency. We are the birthplace of our democracy, and it is critically important that Massachusetts move from being the least transparent state to the most transparent state in the country.
That's great. Thank you. So our top 6 questions, I feel like you're a little ahead of the game, that you're answering them all a little ahead of time, which is fantastic. It's great to knowing that what the questions we're asking and what you're talking about, that's important. Gives validity to our questions, and also really kind of allows us to get that information that we're most concerned about. So thanks for that. So our next question. So and again, a lot of this you just talked on, but maybe there's an element of the question that you might want to expand on.
Okay.
So only 16.9% of eligible Quincy voters cast ballots in the most recent election in 2021. Also, Quincy has a large community of non-native English speakers who may not understand the voting process. What can the Secretary of State do to increase voter turnout and ensure that the information about elections reaches all community members?
Yes. So I'll start at the back end. And you're right. I mean, the numbers that we're seeing out of Quincy, especially, related to municipal elections, is consistent with what we're seeing in municipal elections across the Commonwealth. We've got a very few number of people making decisions about who represents us in our government. We've got to change that. We need more voters participating. And so one of the, as I shared, I lifted up the endorsements that I've received from the Chinese Progressive Political Action Organization and the New England Chinese American Alliance. And I lift those up because In the fight for greater voter access, there has been an ongoing battle for transliterated ballots in communities like Quincy. There's also been an ongoing battle for greater access to transliterated and translated materials through the Secretary of State's office, even on the with respect to filings, corporate filings. And so as Secretary of State, I will work to ensure that transliterated ballots and translated ballots are readily available. I understand that the law gives us a floor as it relates to when translated and transliterated ballots must be available. But again, I believe that's the floor. We need to ensure that every eligible voter is able to show up at their polling location and cast their ballot free and clear and with autonomy. And so as Secretary of State, I will work to ensure that is the case. I look forward to working with our cybersecurity experts and technologists to find ways to ensure that ballots are consistently accessible to all communities that need them. I also believe that this office, again, needs to be more proactive in ensuring and engaged and present, really serving as the face of our government and the face of democracy here in Massachusetts, really showing that that our democracy, that our government here in Massachusetts is open, is welcoming, and is inclusive, and needs and wants the participation of all people. That is going to require the Office of Secretary of State to move beyond four walls. It has to move, this office has to move from behind a desk and has to be present in our communities. So as Secretary of State, I will have a specific unit that is charged with being present in our communities, physically present in our communities consistently. And I, as Secretary of State, look forward to being present in our communities, whether it's sneakers, wedges, sandals, or heels. I look forward to being present in our communities so that, again, we can break down these barriers and demystify our government and really connect with people on the ground so that they can feel like this system, this American democracy is for them too.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm one of your sneaker people over here. So, but I know Ann Mahoney and her heels are on the call too, and I know we've got everybody.
We can do it all.
There you go. Could you just clarify what you meant by transliterated ballots? Would you be able to just talk about that?
Yes. What I mean by that is, so if we use Chinese characters as an example, so it's not so in Mandarin or Cantonese, there are characters that are used. And so we talk about transliteration of ballots versus translation, where we're using, just to, how I say this so that people understand it, using letters that that people may be more, that folks in the English language are more accustomed to. So transliterated ballots would have characters, okay, versus your versus consonants and vowels that people may be more accustomed to seeing.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Trying to break that down. Sorry about that.
No, that's fantastic. It just helps sometimes. I know when you're in the moment, you know what you're talking about. But it's good to, it's just good to explain some of those things. So we have, you're doing great. We have about 12 or so, a dozen more questions or so. So just to let you know where we're at. But I want to give you a little breather there, and
no problem.
You're talking about a lot of things that we talk about during our meetings, during our. A lot of our mission statement is to get out that vote, and a lot of what you're saying kind of highlights that. So, so our next question kind of is, how could you envision ways of working with local organizations like Quincy Votes to increase voter turnout? How could you partner with those organizations and work with us to help further our mission and yours as well.
That's an important part of the plan I have for increasing voter participation. Prong 2 of my strategy is to be intentional about the connections, the relationships this office forges with local trusted community-based organizations like Quincy Votes. It is my full intention, and I bring this, I put my grassroots civil rights organizer hat on as it relates to this. My intention fully is to really convene organizations like Quincy Votes to talk about what's going on in Quincy, what you're hearing on the ground as to why people aren't voting, choosing to cast their ballot, and for us to work together to develop a very targeted plan of action to help increase voter participation. We have a relationship issue when it comes to low voter participation. I know when I'm out doing voter registration or trying to turn out the vote, what I hear from folks who are choosing not to participate is, they either don't believe that their vote matters. They don't believe that when they vote for someone that they're actually going to do what they say they're going to do. There's a broken relationship there. And in order to restore the relationship, in order to restore trust, it's going to require more than ensuring that we've got automatic voter registration. It is going to require the physical presence of the Chief Democracy Officer, the Secretary of State, to help really address that relational issue.
Couldn't find my unmute there. Thank you. So the next couple of questions are kind of, do you support these things? So
okay.
Do you support same-day voter registration? And if so, so that people could register to vote on election day? And if so, how would you help bring that about?
So 2 things. Yes, I am a strong supporter of same day or election day registration. I support election day registration because it will provide more support to our local town clerks and elections officials. But the bottom line is our registration deadline prohibits eligible voters from being able to cast their ballot on election day. And so I'm a firm supporter of election day registration. I will fight to ensure that we get that particular voting right across the finish line because, as I stated earlier, the research is clear. It is one of the most important voting rights we could have to increase voter participation. And here's the thing. Maine adopted same-day voter registration in 1973, about a half century ago. Since that time, 20 other states, including all of the other New England states, have adopted some form of same-day voter registration. We are behind here in Massachusetts, so we've got to get this done. I will work with the legislature to get it done through the legislative process, and if that doesn't work, I believe this is so important that I believe we may need to take it directly to the people. Through a ballot initiative and let Massachusetts voters decide for themselves if we want to advance election day registration, same day voter registration. And just so that folks know, those are the same. When you hear same day voter registration or election day voter registration, they both end up in the same place. The difference is with same day registration, there's no cutoff for a registration deadline. You basically do away with registration deadlines. With election day registration, there would be an initial voter registration deadline, but then registration would open back up again on election day. So functionally, we get the same outcome. Someone can wake up in the morning on election day and decide all of a sudden they've got the voting spirit and they can go down to the polling station, register, and cast their ballot. So you get the same outcome.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So there was a follow-up question that just kind of came in, and while it's kind of pertinent here, is voter participation higher in states with same-day voting? Do you know?
Yeah. So voter participation rates, especially in our gateway cities, So among communities of color, working people, and low income communities, the voter participation rates increase. And that is what the data tells us. Now, anecdotally, okay, data, anecdote. So let me editorialize that. Courtney, you've got me thinking here. Let me editorialize that a little bit. One of the reasons we see an increase in voter participation is because with election day registration or same day registration is because it allows for more flexibility. Think about it. Work and family, low income families experiencing poverty. The focus is on going to work, paying the bills, making sure the lights stay on. Okay. And so voting sometimes is not the top priority. It doesn't mean that people aren't interested. It's just the bills got to get paid. And so having the ability, having that flexibility where someone can say, okay, you know what, here's my last opportunity. I can get there on election day and get it done. Really, the data really shows us that that increases the participation among those communities specifically. And that's critically important.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks
Yep.
for the extra info there. So then the next two were I promised you, do you support questions? So I'm going to do them together in one question. Maybe we could just do a yay or nay on this one, just so we can
Okay.
get to some of the other ones
Sure.
here. So do you support a voter ID requirement, and do you support universal mail-in voting? Why or why not?
Do I support a voter ID requirement? No, I do not. And
The universal mail-in voting. Sorry.
yeah. So and on the ID requirement, I do believe we need to ensure that that there is fairness and accessibility when it comes to IDs. There again, the data tells us that there are deep disparities among those who actually have government IDs and those who don't. And those disparities cut across both racial and economic lines. And so that's why I don't support a voter ID. With respect to the second question, universal mail-in balloting, I want to ask for clarification. Is the question asking about the direct mailing of ballots to voters versus the application process that we currently have?
I think it's the first part, the first of what you were saying there. Yeah.
So I do support full vote by mail, which means I do support the direct mailing of ballots to voters versus the two-step process that we currently have, which requires a voter to submit an application in order to receive that ballot.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you for that. That's great. That's really good and very clear. So this next question has to do with ranked choice voting. And I know it's something that I myself am very it confuses me all the time. So in recent years, there have been attempts to reform our current voting setup with ranked choice voting, where voters would rank the candidates in order of preference in order to ensure that winning candidates would have the support of a majority of voters. With ranked choice voting, if a candidate receives more than half of the first choices, that candidate would win, just like in our current system. However, if there was no majority winner after counting first choices, the candidate with the fewest votes would be eliminated, and voters who picked that candidate as number one would have their votes count for their next choice. This process would continue until a candidate won with more than half the vote. What is your ideal voting setup? Our current winner takes all approach, ranked choice voting, or something else?
I was an honorary co-chair for the 2020 ballot initiative to advance ranked choice voting here in Massachusetts. I'm a strong supporter of ranked choice voting. I'm disappointed that the ballot initiative didn't make it across the finish line in 2020, but I'm very encouraged by some of the efforts at the municipal level across Massachusetts to advance ranked choice voting in municipalities. And as Secretary of State, I will support municipalities that want to advance ranked choice voting by helping to support them through the home rule petition process at the state level.
All right, we're coming to, I know you have another engagement around 6:30 tonight, and so I want to make sure that we get you off in time for that. And we do really so appreciate you joining us tonight and answering all the questions. And what I'd like to just tell everyone here tonight, we're going to take all the questions that we did get to ask you tonight, and we will submit them to the other two candidates. And we'll put this recording along with any answers we receive from them on our website if we get anything back on that. So I wanted to we do have a couple more questions kind of pre-done that we have here, but I wanted to give everyone here an opportunity, if anyone has any live questions kind of before we wrap up, to ask Tanisha. You can feel free to unmute, or if you like, or we can just keep going with ours. Whatever works for you guys. Oh, I see Susan McPherson came online there. Do you have a question?
How are you?
Good.
Yeah, so I submitted it to Maggie, but I'd like to go back to your original part of your presentation where you talk about transparency.
Yes.
And maybe you could clarify a little bit more what you mean, and if you think that's an attitude versus a process problem.
Oh, could you explain that? What do you mean attitude?
So is it because leadership thinks it's not necessary to share versus I just don't know how to, or I don't have the resources to share?
Wonderful question. So here in Massachusetts, we are very unique. Actually, we're the only state in which this is the case. We exempt from public records disclosure our governor's office, the state judiciary, and the state legislature. That's by law. No other state does that. And what that means is here, and also, in open meeting law, our state legislature is not subject to open meeting law. So what that means is, if there is, our state legislature, for example, can actually, in accordance with the law, they can debate public policy behind closed doors, outside of the purview of the public. They are not required to readily share records related to their activities. This is different than what happens at the municipal level. At the municipal level, you may have seen this, city council meetings are public. The minutes of those meetings are public and available. But at the state level, it's different. And again, all three branches of our government are shielded by law from having to disclose. And again, that's very unique. That is not the case in other states across the country. And so I do believe it is important for us to increase the transparency, meaning to increase the accessibility of information from our state government. There are a few ways for us to do that. One, I do believe we should advocate for a legislative change and remove what is now a blanket exemption from those three branches of government, and really work to ensure that if there's public information, or if there's information that's not available to the public, it's for a specific reason, privacy or public safety, for example. But that we are really working to ensure that the public, everyday people, have access to really the information we need to know what's going on in our government. So that's what I mean by increasing transparency. Connecticut is doing something very interesting. They have a what they call a right to know commission that is comprised of everyday people who actually sit and help to make decisions about what information should be publicly available and accessible. And it's a way to ensure that the public, that everyday people, that their voices are heard as it relates to the transparency of our government. I'd like to see us explore something like that here in Massachusetts. So it's not just the Secretary of State making a decision about the transparency of records, but it's actually, again, everyday people making those decisions for ourselves.
Thanks, Tanisha, and thank you for the question, Susan. So we have one last question, and then we want to give you a minute or two to wrap up. So our last question that we have here, so Representative Ayanna Pressley has advocated for lowering the age of voters for federal elections from 18 to 16. How do you feel about that? Do you agree with that change, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm a strong supporter of lowering the voting age at the municipal level specifically, and am on record with that. And the reason I support lowering the voting age in this way is because I believe we've got to do a better job in supporting civics education. And I believe we should have civics education K0 to 12. We start with what flavor of ice cream do you like in kindergarten? Vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. Okay, we're voting. And if we're able to introduce our young people to civics when they're in kindergarten, then by the time they get to be a sophomore in high school, for example, imagine how powerful it would be as part of the learning process for them to be able to cast a vote. Surrounded by the support of educators and their family and their local community, really helping them to learn about the responsibility of casting that ballot, and also helping them to learn how to make decisions about who to vote for. I think that could be incredibly powerful and really help us to build a culture of civic participation that lasts a lifetime.
That's great. And in fact, it's funny you say about ice cream flavors. I know one of our first outreach efforts to Quincy for our group was at a Quincy Pride event, having kids that came up cast their vote for which ice cream flavor they like. Yes. So we're trying to do just like that. So
exactly. Democracy can be fun.
Yes. 100%. So if anyone on the call or anyone here would like to get involved in supporting you in your campaign, do you want to provide any kind of information on how they can get in contact with you, or if they have follow-up questions that didn't get asked tonight that they want to follow up with you about? Is there a way you'd like us to communicate with you?
Absolutely. Again, I thank you so much for your time this evening, and I thank you for the civic participation that you all are engaged in. We need more of this, and that's one of the reasons I'm running, to activate more people in spaces like Quincy Votes. If you'd like to learn more about my campaign, please visit our website, TanishaSullivan.com. There you will find my full issues platform, both my vision and plan for this office, really highlighting what we'll do in the voting rights space, in the transparency space, and as it relates to economic opportunity. I've also included, as part of my issues platform, my plan for how the Secretary of State's office can join the fight to protect abortion access, which I believe is critically important right now. So please visit my website, TanishaSullivan.com. You can also sign up to join Team Tanisha to volunteer in these closing days before the primary. And you are welcome. I would welcome more people to join us as we're turning out the vote. You can also donate to our campaign through the website. At the end of the day, we have a very important primary on September 6th coming up. And I want to encourage folks, regardless of who you vote for, I want to encourage folks to vote on September 6th in the primary. And as it relates to the Secretary of State's race, I am asking for your vote. I'm asking for your vote in the primary, and I'm asking for your support as we work to deliver a stronger, more vibrant, and expansive democracy here in Massachusetts. Again, thank you so very much for welcoming me tonight.
Thank you, Tanisha, for joining us. And we know on campaign trails how difficult it is to get an hour with a candidate. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to all of you guys for coming out tonight, giving us your time. We hope you got a lot of good information. And if you want to follow up with Tanisha, you have that email address, that website, I'm sorry. And we hope you all go out and vote on September 6th. And if you have any questions about Quincy Votes, Oh, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And I see Melissa on. I'm so sorry. For those who know Melissa, you can also reach out to her, a very strong supporter of ours on the campaign. So please, you can visit the website and sign up or reach out to Melissa, certainly. I didn't see you on there. Sorry.
And just thank you for all the behind the scenes folks that helped with tonight, getting tonight ready, and all the tech wizards behind the scenes that from making our background to letting people in. So thank you so much. And so if anybody had any questions about voting, how you vote in Quincy, where your polling location is, if there's anything you need help with, you can stay on the call, and we'll be here for at least 10 or 15 minutes after we kind of close here, and we'll be able to help you out with that. Or if you want to get more involved with Quincy Votes, we also would love the help, and to be able to also share our mission and spread our mission of just go vote, right? Be educated, research the issues, research the candidates, and go vote. Be an educated voter, no matter that your voice matters, and to get out there and vote. So thank you to Tanisha, and thank you to everyone. If you don't have any questions, we hope you have a great night. Otherwise, stay on and we will hang with you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I couldn't get here till quite later. Is it available on YouTube to watch?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, Maggie can tell you how to access that, or I'm sure actually we'll probably follow up with an email on
Okay.
how to access that.
Great. Thanks for doing this. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Okay, bye-bye.
You did so awesome. That was so good.
You too. You too.